In today's video, we will dive into the life of one of the most controversial and enigmatic figures of modern occultism, Aleister Crowley, also known as the Great Beast 666. Crowley was born Edward Alexander Crowley on October 12, 1875, in Leamington Spa, England. His family belonged to an extremely conservative Christian group known as the Plymouth Brethren, who followed strict rules centered on devotion and discipline. From an early age, Edward showed an unusual intelligence, but also a natural rebelliousness against the religious restrictions imposed by his parents. While his mother considered him a difficult child, she herself began to call him the Beast, in reference to the figure from the biblical Book of Revelation. What began as a maternal criticism would later be embraced by Crowley with pride, transforming into one of the central symbols of his spiritual identity. As a young man, Crowley experienced a deep break with Christianity. The rigid and punitive image of God presented by his family seemed suffocating to him, incompatible with his thirst for freedom and knowledge. He began searching for answers elsewhere, immersing himself in esoteric literature, philosophy, and poetry. It was during this period that his first encounters with occultism began. During his youth, Crowley studied at Cambridge University, where he excelled in poetry, philosophy, and even chess. At the same time, he led a double life. On one hand, the talented academic. On the other, the seeker exploring secret societies, alchemy, and mystical texts. This path eventually led him, in 1898, to join one of the most famous esoteric orders of the West, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Within the Golden Dawn, Crowley encountered masters and rituals that combined Kabbalah, alchemy, ceremonial magic, and Hermetic symbolism. His brilliant mind allowed him to rise quickly within the order's ranks, but his strong personality and ambition for leadership soon sparked conflicts. He clashed with prominent members such as William Butler Yeats and even Samuel Little MacGregor Mathers, one of the order's founders. This environment of internal disputes ultimately pushed Crowley to forge his own path, seeking to build an independent legacy in occultism. He did not want to remain just a disciple, he wanted to be a master. And so began the journey of Aleister Crowley. From a rebellious youth born into a strict Christian household, to a figure destined to walk on the fringes of society, challenging dogmas, breaking taboos, and claiming for himself the title of the Great Beast 666. After becoming an independent figure in the world of occultism, Aleister Crowley entered a phase of intense spiritual and esoteric exploration. Driven by an insatiable thirst for knowledge and the need to experience mystical practices from different cultures, he embarked on journeys that would profoundly shape his path. Crowley traveled to India, where he delved into the study of yoga, meditation practices, and physical and spiritual disciplines aimed at the expansion of consciousness. There he learned to harmonize body, mind, and spirit, observing how ancient traditions sought to control vital energy, awaken perception, and unite with the divine. But Crowley did not limit himself to theoretical study. He experimented practically with breathing techniques, postures, and rituals that he would later integrate into his own system of magic. Egypt was another decisive turning point. In 1904, Crowley traveled to Cairo and to the city of Beni Hassan, where he stayed in a modest hotel room. It was there that he had what he described as a mystical and revelatory experience. Claiming contact with a spiritual entity named Aiwass, Crowley stated that he was dictated words that would become the Book of the Law, Liber al vel Legis, the central text of the philosophy of Thelema. According to Crowley, Aiwass was a higher intelligence, a messenger of cosmic truths, and the book contained instructions for the dawning of a new spiritual era. The Book of the Law presented precepts that shocked society at the time and transformed Crowley into a prophet for some and a heretic for many others. Among its most famous principles are, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." This maxim emphasizes the importance of every individual discovering and following their true will. That is, their deepest and most authentic purpose in life. According to Crowley, only by acting in accordance with this will can human beings achieve harmony and spiritual fulfillment. Love is the law, love under will. Here Crowley connects love with conscious will. It is not about emotional or impulsive love, but rather a love guided by awareness and wisdom, one that respects the freedom of each being and is aligned with the true essence behind every action. The philosophy of Thelema was therefore structured upon three central pillars: individual freedom, the overcoming of dogmas, and the quest for true will. Crowley saw traditional religion and rigid social norms as obstacles that prevented full spiritual development. For this reason, his teaching defended the idea that each person must break these chains and discover by themselves the path that would lead them to inner realization. During these travels, Crowley also explored Mexico, where he studied shamanic practices and indigenous rituals. He was particularly interested in the use of sacred plants and techniques for expanding consciousness, which he considered powerful tools for contacting spiritual dimensions and higher intelligences. These experiences reinforced his conviction that magic was not mere superstition, but rather a structured method of inner transformation capable of elevating human consciousness. The Thelemic worldview thus emerged as a synthesis of his experiences, a system that combines ceremonial magic, Eastern mysticism, personal discipline, and the relentless pursuit of self-knowledge. For Crowley, the ultimate goal was not simply to acquire occult powers, but to discover and manifest each individual's true nature, living in accordance with one's deepest will, in full harmony with the universe. This phase of Crowley's life marked the moment when he consolidated himself as both magician and prophet, taking on a role that went beyond the simple practice of rituals. He became a messenger of a new spiritual era, a guide for those who dared to break barriers, challenge dogmas, and explore the limits of human consciousness. Crowley believed that through magic, the study of universal laws, and mastery over oneself, anyone could achieve complete freedom and a profound understanding of the cosmos. And thus, Aleister Crowley ceased to be merely a rebellious youth or a brilliant student. He became the prophet of Thelema, bearer of a philosophy that still challenges our ideas about morality, spirituality, and personal power. His message echoes as a call to courage, autonomy, and the tireless quest for true will, even if that means crossing into the unknown and facing the fear of being misunderstood. Aleister Crowley, already known for his spiritual and philosophical explorations, solidified his reputation as a controversial, enigmatic, and provocative figure. The nickname that would accompany him for the rest of his life, the Great Beast 666, was not merely a sensationalist title created by the media or religious critics. For Crowley, it was a conscious affirmation of his spiritual and magical identity. The number 666, traditionally associated with the biblical apocalypse, was adopted by Crowley as a symbol of freedom and defiance against Christian morality. He embraced the name of the beast as a way to free himself from the oppressive norms of Victorian society, which he saw as a prison for human consciousness. For Crowley, the great beast represented the assertion of the individual above dogmas and prejudices, an invitation to explore spirituality independently, even if it shocked and provoked public morality. Throughout his career, Crowley engaged in practices that, to the society of his time, seemed extremely transgressive. Among them was sex magic, which he considered a powerful tool for spiritual transformation. In his rituals, sexual energy was not merely a physical act, but a source of magical power and expanded consciousness. capable of opening portals to spiritual dimensions and intensifying connection with the divine. Crowley also performed invocation rituals, through which he sought to communicate with higher intelligences, spiritual entities, or deeper aspects of his own psyche. Another controversial element was his experimentation with drugs, including cannabis, opium, cocaine, and other psychoactive substances. Crowley did not view these substances as ends in themselves, but as ritualistic tools for exploring altered states of consciousness, broadening perception, and transcending the limits of ordinary experience. He documented many of these experiments in his books and diaries, always linking them to magical and spiritual goals. In 1920, Crowley founded the famous Abbey of Thelema in the small town of Sicily, Sicily. The abbey functioned as a center for magical practices, esoteric studies, and spiritual experimentation, attracting disciples from around the world. Rituals there followed a strict symbolic and ceremonial structure, but the community quickly drew negative attention from neighbors, authorities, and the press. Stories of eccentric parties, ritualized sexual practices, and immoral behavior began to circulate, fueling Crowley's reputation as a dangerous and subversive man. The media spared no words. Sensationalist headlines described him as the wickedest man in the world, a heretic who promoted moral chaos and corrupted the youth. His public image was often distorted and exaggerated. The real Crowley, scholar, magician, poet, and philosopher, was frequently eclipsed by the myth that surrounded him. To the outside world, he was simply the beast, the villain, the provocateur. Yet to his disciples and followers, he was a spiritual master and a guide in the search for true will. This difference between myth and reality is crucial to understanding Crowley. He never denied his controversial reputation, but was aware that many of the rumors were distorted interpretations of his practices and intentions. Sex magic, rituals, and drug experiments were tools of self-knowledge and transformation, not acts of gratuitous decadence or corruption. The shock he caused in society was, in part, inevitable for someone who dared to challenge norms and explore spiritual territories that were ignored or forbidden. In a sense, scandal itself functioned as an extension of his philosophy. Crowley believed that fear, prejudice, and public misunderstanding were obstacles that each individual had to overcome in order to achieve spiritual autonomy. By facing society's condemnation, he reaffirmed the importance of living according to one's true will without bowing to external expectations. Even today, the image of Crowley as the great beast continues to fascinate and intrigue. He became an icon of counterculture, modern occultism, and alternative spirituality, demonstrating that legend is often more powerful than reality. Yet understanding the man behind the myth reveals a story of courage, audacity, and an unrelenting quest for knowledge and freedom. Thus, the great beast 666 is not merely the portrait of scandal or misunderstood practices, but a symbol of the struggle between the free spirit and the chains of a society that fears the unknown. It reflects a man who dared to live outside the rules, expand the limits of consciousness, and leave a legacy that would endure for decades, still inspiring and provoking those who dare to seek truth beyond the conventional. In the last years of his life, Aleister Crowley faced significant difficulties. Fragile health, poverty, and isolation did not prevent him from continuing to serve as a teacher to his disciples and followers. Until the very end, Crowley remained active in the study of magic, in writing, and in transmitting his teachings, reaffirming his mission to guide those who sought to understand the true will and transcend the limits of human consciousness. Crowley's impact on modern occultism is both profound and enduring. His texts, rituals, and the philosophy of Thelema influenced numerous occult orders, esoteric groups, and practitioners of magic around the world. Moreover, his influence transcended the esoteric sphere and reached the counterculture of the 1960s, being referenced by artists such as the Beatles and Led Zeppelin, as well as by musicians, writers, and thinkers who sought spiritual freedom in the breaking of rigid dogmas. Crowley can be seen as a forerunner of free spirituality, a movement that values autonomy, the personal quest for the divine, and the conscious practice of magic and meditation without dependence on traditional religious systems. His work invites each individual to challenge imposed standards, discover their own true will, and live authentically and fully. Yet at the same time, his figure remains controversial. Was he a misunderstood genius, a spiritual prophet, or merely a bold provocateur who sought to shock and transgress? Perhaps the answer lies in the very duality Crowley himself cultivated, the tension between myth and the real man, between social critique and spiritual awakening, between scandal and wisdom. What can we learn from his life? That true spiritual freedom requires courage to face fear, overcome prejudice, and walk toward one's true will, even when the external world does not understand or rejects our choices. That knowledge, when sought sincerely and with discipline, can transform the individual, expand consciousness, and open doors to previously unknown dimensions. Aleister Crowley remains a figure surrounded by mystery, fear, and fascination. More than the stigma of the great beast 666, his work still echoes in modern occultism and spirituality. And what about you? What do you think of him? Visionary or charlatan? Leave your opinion in the comments and join this reflection on one of the most enigmatic figures in esoteric history.